Go.
Got
Hello, everybody. This is Mary Jo and Christine Cooper, and we are the Resistors. We have decided that we wanted to take time to provide an opportunity for people around the globe to talk with us about what their experience has been as long COVID sufferers. There are, what we know of at least, approximately 65 million people suffering long COVID worldwide. And despite that enormous number, Christine and I believe there's just not enough information out there, nor is there enough understanding of what people suffering from long COVID actually experience. So we wanted to provide them a space to talk about their experience so far. We also want to help inform the public about the realities of long COVID, provide the human side to this disease. We want to encourage people to support those who do suffer from long COVID. Many can really use the help. We also want to encourage people to continue to break the chains of COVID transmission, because ultimately we will decrease or at least stop the number of long COVID sufferers, the fewer people who have a COVID infection and reinfection. So we want to do what we can to break those chains. Today, we are really honored to welcome Ty. Thank you for taking the time today to meet with us and chat. We've only connected on Twitter, but that's where we have found we've connected with so many people. So we'd love you just to say hello and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, even starting with your Twitter handle and what that means to you.
Sure. My Twitter handle and Instagram, I think on Twitter, I'm Seeks Boston 26 MI, because Seeking Boston Marathon was too long of a handle. My blog has that namesake. So people are often confused why this Seeking Boston thing. Yes, I am a runner, former runner, and that's where my blog started. But in the last 3 years, it's turned into a long COVID journey blog. So it's become my platform of advocacy. So on Instagram, you can find me at Seeking Boston Marathon. On Twitter, it's Seeks Boston 26 MI.
I think I'm actually following you now on Insta, although it sounds a bit stalkerish, doesn't it? Right? We're all kind of following each other. Ty, can you give us a little capture of your life, like how old you are, where you're located,
generally,
life,
even
like,
if you don't want to be
married,
specific.
you have family, like
Sure.
Give us a capture of your life.
Yeah, you bet. Well, there's also that my life before, my life now. We'll get into that certainly, but I live in Denver. I was an avid runner and software sales executive prior to getting sick, and unfortunately, I try not to have it fully define me, but it defines much of our lives for those that suffer from long COVID. So I was an early adopter. I try to overexceed on everything. So I actually got sick in January of 2020.
Quite early. Yeah.
My onset would be categorized as mild. I was doing a ton of international travel. So in the month of January and February of that year, I was in Seattle, Montreal, Cape Town, South Africa, through Europe and back home through Europe. And somewhere along there, I'd picked up what I felt was a virus, but that was also when news was starting to come out about this thing called COVID. So I was actually training for, I've done 5 Boston marathons. Running was very much a big part of my identity, and was training for a half marathon with a special needs kid named Liam. As I matured, that's the word for aging gracefully. I tripped into a relationship with a Team Hoyt kid out in San Diego. So I raced with him 11 times, a couple triathlons. So I was super active, runner, triathlete. I've got 3 young adult kids. I've got a very supportive and understanding wife who's got her own autoimmune issues she grapples with. But that's a quick flyby of kind of who I am and where I am, and a bit of my backstory of stumbling into this long COVID thing.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a question. It might be a hard one already to dive into, but I noticed that twice now you've referred to yourself as a runner in the past. Have you gotten to a point where you think you won't be a runner again, where you won't pick that up again?
No, that's a great question. It was odd because in January of 20, first off, I thought it was just a really hardcore virus or garden variety virus. And I continued to train as runners do if you've got the stomach flu, you don't train. If you've got a head cold or, cold virus, you continue to push through. So I had a race in March that I continued to train for. And that was my last long run. And all the races got canceled. I wound up doing the race virtually for Liam because the race was going to be out in San Diego. So I ran 13.1 miles. I remember it vividly on March 15th, which was supposed to be the day of the race in 2020. And then I completely bombed the next day. So I knew this was something that was above and beyond a garden variety, cold or virus. In terms of, I think once a runner, always a runner. I honestly, at this stage, it is hard to imagine getting back to running. I mean, yesterday I'm sitting on the couch and all of a sudden I'm gulping for air, and air and lungs are one thing a runner needs. And I mean, I was a high achiever. And it helped with my stress. It was a huge part of my identity. My wife loved travel, destination races. My relationship with Liam was just super rewarding. And, that's all gone. In the back of my mind, I'm trying to get better and would love to return to it. If I had to be realistic, at this, date, I don't see how that's happening absent a breakthrough. And, this is still very much research phase.
Right.
In terms of treatment. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Ty, you said that after that race, the next day you bombed. Can you tell Mary Jo and I what that looked like for you? What was that? How did it manifest?
And it's a bit of my baseline. So, I mean, my baseline is a flu-like symptom that would cause the average person to call in sick every day. When I say it bombed, it was a huge flare-up because I didn't just run 13.1 miles. I pushed it hard because I was a very type A individual. I wanted to run it fast. Had a lot of stress over being sick. And, so that next day, it felt like a full-on flu. But it wasn't, I say flu/virus because it was just, my body was just a complete wreck, like the chills, body aches, just completely wiped out. So clearly it's not the smartest thing that I did, but that was the last 13-mile run I had.
So, obviously through the last few years, we've started to learn more and more about COVID in general and about long COVID. And they talk a lot about, post-external malaise after right? After you exert yourself. And then, so I imagine, back then we wouldn't have known, or you wouldn't have known even first that you had maybe necessarily COVID, or that perhaps that might exacerbate your symptoms. Or they talk a little bit about how for some people that may have been what brought on the long COVID version of things. Do you have knowledge of that, or is that something you've learned? Or
I've got, if I understood your question or point correctly, I do believe that I dug a deeper hole in pushing myself through athletics in those first couple of months. I've actually know of a woman out of Portland, Oregon, that kind of was the same as me and pushed herself. And she's like, I just don't feel right. And, wound up going on a vacation with her sister, going for a run, not feeling right, checked in a hospital and didn't make it. So those are the extreme, stories. So it certainly will scare you to death about being smart. I think, I fully believe that, and it seems that there's a lot of athletes in this. You don't have to be an athlete to get long COVID, but it does seem that there's the type A, part of me that drove myself not only in athletics, but also in business. Because I continue to work through all of
Ailments.
2020 and work through a 100-day fever.
Jesus
And that
Christ.
usually freaks people out. And they're like, you mean you had 100-degree fever? I'm like, yeah, I had 100-degree fever every day for 100 days. So that's also when I knew I wasn't dealing with,
Epstein-Barr syndrome.
Well, there, don't get me on a tangent. And I've had every test known. There's certainly theories around reactivation of Epstein-Barr virus. My numbers were high when I started going through all the blood tests, and I've had every blood and imaging test you can imagine. And I think that's also a theory that I believe has validity, and that it seems like it reactivates or creates a superpower of virus in your body that just won't go away.
Mm-hmm.
So in all this time since then, how have you managed to weed through the junk and weed through the maybes nots, where have you accessed most of your information to date, and how have you managed through it?
Right. Well, I think being goal driven and solution, I had a career in sales, and, that was marked with daily adversity. You're dealing with problem solving. So I've kind of I've used what's left of my business brain to attack it in that sense. And it's a tough balance, because, there are times when it's consumed and obsessed me from finding a solution. And I've had to pump the brakes and do a mind shift of knowing that this is a marathon, not a 5K journey. But I've turned over every rock there is. I happen to have one of the best lung hospitals in certainly in the country, if not the world, in National Jewish Health. That's where I kind of started my medical journey.
Oh, excellent.
They exhausted every lung and heart image there was, because keep in mind, this was before there was a vaccine. This was before swabs. So they were trying to eliminate, I had a PET scan, so I've literally, they want to rule out cancer and everything else.
Right.
They want referring to Mayo Clinic. I took 5 trips to Mayo, and they were the first ones that identified and labeled me as having long COVID. In the last.
So you got a definitive diagnosis from the Mayo?
From Mayo Clinic, yes. And then,
can I just ask who pays for all those trips back and forth? Do you have coverage, Ty, or is this out of pocket, or?
Well, I realize you're up in Canada and you've got a different health system than we do.
Well, we have our own problems. Trust me, it's not perfect.
Long COVID ain't cheap.
That's a great quote.
Long
COVID ain't cheap.
Yeah, I gotta believe that. In total, I've probably got over, I don't know, a couple $100,000 in tests and doctors and hospitals and trips. In the US, you've got a certain threshold that you can write off your medical expenses on taxes. Well, I hit that this year. We've got the notion of, first off, there's COVID. Well, there's two parts of it. There's the health insurance, which again, US centric. When you lose employee in the US, you've got this thing called COBRA. That's a continuation of health benefits. I was able to get that for a year and a half, segueing out of eventually leaving my employer. That was $1,700 a month.
Oh shit! Sorry.
For health, yeah. Oh shit is right. For
health. Oh my God! I'm just like, what?
That's before you step foot in the doctor's office. So this last year, I believe I've got probably $19,000 in medical expenses in addition or on top of that health insurance number.
Right.
So it's really I sometimes use the word fortunate, which is an odd choice of words, because I know friends online, you've got friends online that they're losing their homes. They're having to,
give away their pets.
Give away their pets.
Give away their pets or have GoFundMe's, and look for help.
Yeah, we're seeing lots of that.
We wound up vagabonding, if that's a word, for 10 months last year as part of a, offense, defense financially, because we were worried about losing our home. So the fortunate part was that I did, with my wife and her strong brain and support, we filed for FMLA, again, a US term. It's a Family Medical Leave Act, where it's basically you while you're employed, you file this paperwork. It's federally protected to say, we can't fire you because you're sick. So that was a first step in working with HR. I subsequently filed for short-term disability, then long-term disability through private insurance. And through them, I then started the process of filing for Social Security disability on top of that. So I'm trying to keep the answer succinct, but it's
no,
just you don't
say
have
what
to.
you need. Don't have to.
If it's complicated, it's going to be a complicated answer.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's expensive.
Yeah.
I know Dave or D-Bone on Twitter.
Dave the Barbarian.
He just quit going to the doctor because he's like, what's the point? And he's also got financial issues. He's in, not to talk about his story, mine. We share stories on our Social Security disability journey. I've gotten verbal approval on that. But you don't get rich on Social Security disability.
Right.
Yeah, I don't.
When you mentioned too how lucky you were that you've said twice now, your wife with the strong brain.
Yes.
I'm going to assume you're talking about results of long COVID and not how you were before with her, that the woman had the strong.
She was always smart. That's
what I was getting at.
Well, she was smart enough to marry you, buddy.
There you go. So I do want to, if it's okay, I would love to talk to you about just what your cognitive, issues are, if they are. But really quickly, first, I want to acknowledge that when you talk about, being fortunate, even to have someone in your corner to help you wade through all that bureaucracy, right? Red tape and paperwork. And for those of you who are suffering, who are on your own, the effort it takes to advocate for yourself often takes so much energy that you just don't have already. Right. So I would imagine that would be a challenge like you're talking about, maybe perhaps for Dave and that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, you hear the concept of spoons, which is a term my wife loaned to me, and I use now. And now it's one of those words, you learn the word, you see it all the time, because you've got only so many, battery squares, to use the cell phone analogy, in a day. And so you start out every day with 1 or 2 battery squares at most. And how are you going to use those? I think I went off on a tangent. That's part of the cognitive thing. So cognitively, it's scary because I lost both parents last year. So it's, like kind of,
I'm sorry.
2021 was like hold my beer. 2022. So that's a lot to take. But my dad, in part, died of dementia, and it's difficult for me to see cognitive issues, and I'm 25 years ahead of him on the whole cognitive journey, and it presents itself in different ways, as through the process of, in Mayo they did a cognitive test. The name escapes me, and that's a metaphor in itself. It'll come to me, but as part of my Social Security journey, they had me come in, and I thought it was like a half an hour interview. It turned into a 4-hour.
Jesus Christ. They know you're sick, right?
Well, it turned into this, I think it was Pearson's cognitive test.
Oh, crazy.
And halfway through, I'm like, are we almost done? Because I'm really struggling here physically, cognitively. And it was kind of like the Trump man, person, woman, camera, TV.
Oh, right.
Oh, good
But it was,
God.
I knew I bombed it. And, I couldn't, it's common things like recalling shapes, telling a story and being able to recall parts of that story, and word combinations. And it was just, horrible. How it presents itself in a day. I mean, I've left the home with the gas stove on and a kitchen towel right next to it. I just outed myself to my wife on that one. I'm not sure I've told her that one.
Your secret's safe with us.
Hey, the internet's forever, right?
Until she watches it. Yeah.
Driving somewhere and forgetting where you're driving. I can't read novels anymore. I just gave up because I would read and reread a page and I can't comprehend it.
Ty, do you struggle with any foods? Like, I know we've heard coffee, alcohol is a no-go.
Oh, alcohol is the absolute devil. I talked about that 13-mile run in 2020. I've had to give up alcohol because it destroys you the next day. So that's probably one area where I haven't tried. I mean, the internet is full of people saying, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you tried the goat hair soup? It's endless. I think that could be something to try. I think there might be a onset diabetes component to what I've got because of sugar. I seem to have this devil relationship with it's a just like anybody, they're stressed, they would reach for something, but I think it also exacerbates symptoms. Last night was neuropathy night and up all hours of the night, putting on the compression socks or going to the ice tub. But
so the cognitive things that you've been dealing with, has that been obvious almost from the beginning?
No, good question. I mean, I did that first Pearson's test at Mayo, and I would say middle of 21, and the torture test version I did was like 6 months ago, and I noticed a huge difference between the two. So,
you did? Like worsening?
Oh, yes. And by comparison, I mean, I didn't notice at the onset. I mean, I think this, again, my onset was very mild compared to a lot of people. I wasn't hospitalized. Although looking back, I could see where, and it was hard to tell if it was, working with 100-degree fever and trying to maintain, because, your survival instinct.
Quo, yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, I've got to keep my income. I've got to keep insurance, all those things. But
we are so wired to just try to work through the pain, push through, no pain, no gain, and all that sort of mentality, right? To our detriment, I think.
Oh yeah, no, I ran the Chicago Marathon on a stress fracture. So trust me, I've got that alpha male stupidity, that component that, I think that, is a blessing and a curse. I think it keeps me motivated to find solutions and return to a normal life. But it can also be a curse. You talked about post-exertion malaise, post-exertion symptom exacerbation. I've gone through 2 or 3 graded exercise therapy programs, which I believe are barbaric. The second, or the last one, I should say, the physical therapist said, and she saw my decline, and this was like just going and walking 10 minutes on a treadmill. She saw the damage it was doing, and I thank her professionally for recognizing that and
stopping it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, the running community, I'm not a runner, but I have done some running. I am an athlete. I play other things, but the running community, I know from friends who do run, is quite tight, right? It's quite a great group. A lot of people who motivate and support and things. And so how did you find it once you couldn't be in that community anymore, just as far as racing? Did people have you stayed connected with them, or is it what we're hearing from some people over time? People separate, they move on, and that kind of thing. Have you experienced?
I'd say a little bit of both. I mean, I've got great friends that I used to be run ambassador and blog ambassador for a lot of run brands, and one of them, Pro Compression, reached out recently because I use compression socks, and I used to use them from running. So there's a lot of really good friends that still follow my story and root me on, and thankfully haven't dropped me on. Although adding or dropping on Twitter is not a measure of happiness, but
not at all.
There is in the same breath, there's a great sense of community of a couple of good friends I've already talked about. But I'd say it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's kind of like you've got any severe illness or a divorce, and people don't know what to say, so they start to drift away or distance. So I certainly see that. But I think I see more of the run community and friends that they don't know what to say, but yet a lot of them do. I mean, they'll chirp in,
touch base, and
because I'll occasionally post an old photo of running, and people will comment, and I'll still congratulate people on a race. But as the spring temperatures are hitting, everywhere, it is still tough, because I'll slow down and look at a runner running down the road and wish I was out there. And I don't know, the mental part of it. I think I got to a pretty dark place at one point. You certainly have to manage your mental health. There's a high rate of suicide among people with long COVID.
We're hearing this.
I've got a good defense mechanism for that, but it doesn't mean that the night became a nightmare of just dwelling on loss of life and lifestyle and things. I've done some neurofeedback therapy that I think has helped quite a bit here in Denver to manage that. But I think it's kind of like the alcoholic. Once you're prone to depression, you need to manage it, and I do my best. Some days are better than others, but I think that's a sort of all these different components or legs of the stool of a long COVID life that you got to manage.
Ty, you mentioned you had adult children. I was just kind of wondering where their heads in all of this, because you're their
do they understand it? Or
I mean, all of them are very supportive, and young adult boys are different than my oldest daughter, who
thank God for the daughters.
I've got to be careful. I don't make sense.
He loves them all equally.
Misogynist or sexist.
Yeah.
It's okay.
My daughter is very emotional and very supportive. And so she's amazing. She'll, call a lot and send photos and text, and, very supportive.
Nice.
What's a good day look like for you, Ty?
That's a great question, because it's a bit of a kaleidoscope. If you harken back to your childhood and looking through that kaleidoscope, every day is different prisms, and some of them good, some of them bad. And my mornings are typically better than afternoons, because you will see symptoms climb throughout the day. Generically, I would say there's no good days physically, because there's there's not a day where I don't feel something, whether it's neuropathy or the dyspnea or chest pain, chest spasms. A good day is just having a slice of normal life. If it's simply going to the corner coffee shop, that's a good day. Because I can't do a lot. But I refuse to be, completely bedbound either.
You mentioned you recently did a watercolor.
I started a watercolor. I mean, so that's the one thing. So on a good day, so that's another good way to answer it. I've lost my right brain and a lot of my analytical side of the brain, but I feel fortunate that my creativity has in some respects blossomed. I try to be funny. I use humor as a defense mechanism. So I've got a series of
the mean tweets,
mean tweet video episodes based
on.
Yeah. I'm going to do one day. I'm definitely going to do one day with you.
For $10, you can build your own green screen at home, and you too can appear in a mean tweets episode.
We have a green screen, like a green sheet of fabric that we've used.
That's exactly all you need. I've done some advocacy, videos, and there's a lot of gaslighters out there, and you got to be careful because you can be consumed with anger and venom around, the Vinay Prasads of the world, or the Natalie Shirley article on long COVID ain't real. There's the Netflix aviation author that put out the article in Slate this last week that it just drives you bonkers on this. Anyway, I digress.
So no, it's okay.
That's okay.
I use art as an expressive form. I'll do illustrations. I've done a few videos. Back to your question on the watercolor. In 2020, I did one of my more ambitious projects is 100-hour digital painting, and not applying like a digital painting effect to a photo, but you can actually use a Wacom drawing tablet and actually paint like a regular paintbrush.
Yes.
So I did a 100-hour project that I can't take on projects of that size. So, I'm starting on a watercolor that is a little less effort, and I can do an hour here or there.
Right. You can leave it and come back. I saw that you had retweeted someone who we've been following for a little while. Someone who's chosen art as a way to express her long COVID journey, Christine Goldschmidt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she's amazing. Yes.
Yeah, we mentioned her in our Twitter spaces before because her art is really, really beautiful. And does that resonate with you? How she shares her story that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another one, Sam.
Oh yeah.
Warple. Yeah. I think she's a lawyer. I probably hacked her name. She's done her own stuff. So I think it's expression, talking about things is good therapy. You can't hold this all inside. So that, it's cheaper than the therapist. And it's part advocacy, part therapy for me. But yeah, there's some great artists that, Christine is insane. She's the one I think that has done the long COVID map and the journey.
That's what drew us to her with the first time. I said, oh, Christine, look at this. And I think, obviously part of art, especially if you're suffering any cognitive impairment, you don't have to search for the words when you're drawing, right? Like it's a different, right? It's that part.
Yeah, I think the first illustration I did was actually here in the US featured and as part of a story on NBC Nightly News, and it was the COVID monster.
Wow, really?
There's all these kind of analogies of monsters and what's wild about that illustration at the time, because this felt very bloodstream to me. So I had this monster that wrapped its like tentacles which looked like capillaries around my legs because it was really showing up. You mentioned your neuropathy,
Yeah, in my feet.
My feet and
Yeah.
legs. So yes, I was an art major that sold my soul to the devil, went into business, but I've kind of returned to my roots as an
Yeah, look
artist.
what's saving you now, right? Is your art.
Exactly.
Well, actually, okay, so then there, I know like this has been it's a tough haul for you and everything that you're going through.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm learning as a woman who's in her 60s in the messy middle, we learn to pivot a lot because it's like, well, I don't do what I used to do because I'm kind of retired from that. But does that define who I am? And I've moved into other things. But what I'm learning is sometimes in the things that happen to us and we pivot, we find other things. Like all of a sudden, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, there could be a monetization of your digital art at some point for yourself, right? That may be a possibility. Same with Christine. Like I thought, my gosh, she could be turning this into digital art that could be
to help support her.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
right?
the challenge with that is, artists that do graphic arts or art for a living, they're slave to deadlines and
Fair enough. Yeah.
obscene hours that
Mhm.
doesn't work with my 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 current competencies or capabilities. So I can do a piece, but on my time over a period of time without a deadline.
Mhm.
It just makes them more precious, Ty.
Yeah, I can't
Right?
sit at a computer at midnight or 10 hours in a day, which is
Right.
probably the life of the average graphic artist. But
Is there anything specific that you're hanging your hat on as far as hopes and treatment, or the fact that the word's getting out more? There was an International Long COVID Awareness Day, which I think garnered quite a lot of support. Are there things that you see out there that you're hopeful about?
yeah, I mean that I I kind of cut short the chronological journey. I mean,
Mm.
I've got what I consider a medical team. I've got my local neurologist. I still work in tandem with Mayo Clinic, but I'm also working with a long COVID clinic in the U.S. called Rhythm out of California and Oregon, and they're part research, part clinic, part startup.
Mm.
And that goes back to long COVID ain't cheap because they've had to up their prices, and quite frankly, I didn't know how they made a business out of it before because it was dirt cheap. Um, but I digress. I think that is one thing that does give me hope because I'm working with somebody that is talking to the Rezias of the world and the Professor Kells and the Petrino Labs. They're at the tip of the sword, if you will.
Yeah, in the forefront of information, right?
Yeah. But you need to balance that with this is still, if you listen to some of those names, they will still, say this is research phase, and we've got theories around, reactivation of EBV and the microclots component that is certainly out there. So I mean that's something that gives me hope from a medical standpoint.
Right.
Honestly, I do still struggle with because I wasn't ready for retirement. So I'm now having to grapple with, if this is my next 10 years, but I also, grapple with mortality because people long COVID don't have long lifespans. So how do you, have a fulfilling life with what you can do? And I try and look at what I can do versus what I can't do.
Right. That's actually a really good perspective. To as opposed to like lamenting about what all the things you've lost and all the things you can't do, looking for some silver linings for you somehow. There's that. Have you had people inside your universe? And when I say in your universe, I'm talking about in your friend zone and people sort of gaslight you up about it's not a real thing. Eat a carrot, get some sunshine, you'll be better. Like it's not real. Have you had any of that?
Yeah, I mean, and some of it's innocent, or they've got best intentions, but I think I did a blog post on that of, top 10 things not to say to someone with
I think
long
I read
COVID.
that actually.
Yeah,
The,
yeah.
the one that, oh, well, you look good, you know, um,
And
and I know they were trying to give you a compliment of,
yeah, because they don't know what else to say, maybe.
well, but that also, the bubble above my head says, well, you don't look sick. That's what it
Right.
sounds like. And because I'm not in a wheelchair, and, there's, um, I seem lucid to you today. I don't look like your classic disabled person, but,
Yeah.
I overdo it in any sense, and it could send me to an early, nap in the afternoon, and bedtime's always early. um, but yeah, so it's tough. It's with any, chronic illness. I think people struggle with what to say unless they really know it. The gaslighting is something that I need to balance my fury, and it sometimes shows up in my art of,
Mm.
um, you know, the king and queen of gaslighting. And I did my Vinay, the conspiracy bear, which was,
I saw that.
one of my,
Yeah.
I love that.
I
That was a
love
lot.
I
I
love
like you have
following
some
your
sense of
account.
humor in
Yeah.
there. Yeah, yeah.
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 I
So
definitely
that humor's my defense mechanism.
what this is I'm so happy that we've had an opportunity to connect with you and actually have this conversation because now I have your voice in my head. So now when I read your tweets and your posts,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hear your voice. I'm gonna think Ginge, cool lenses, dig this guy, so much good energy. I'm so happy that we've had this. Unfortunately, what brought us together isn't a great thing, but I'm so
Right.
happy that we've had this. If Mary Jo wrote this question, I'm going to ask this. If the world was your oyster, what would you ask for?
Well, I would want a cure. I think I would hope that would be the most common answer, because it's not just for me, it's for, uh, the hordes of friends that I've, you know, become friends with online that are struggling with around the world. Um, I think that, maybe oyster goal number two is, just for understanding in the world and the community that, I we get attacked every day on, oh, it's the jab, or, it's in your head, or you're a beta male, or this or that. And I'm like, you know,
Dude,
post-viral illnesses are not new. So
no.
previous SARS, Lyme disease, you can
Yeah.
get sick and have a, exacerbated illness from a virus. So this is not something new. We just happen to hit a once in 100-year superpower of viruses. So
Mhm.
there's a ton of people really sick. So that would be the other thing, is just stop the nonsense of gaslighting or diminishing. You've heard my background, my story. You don't think I want to race with Liam? You don't think I want to, go back to my career and traveling the world? It's not
Yeah,
a
like
glamour
what
life.
on earth would possibly make you
Right.
choose this over what you were doing all of a
Right.
sudden,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Okay.
But a cure would be at the top of the list. I've got to balance that with, realism of this
Mhm.
this will be the rest of my life. But I haven't given up on, finding some treatment. I've got, another 2 rounds of blood tests this week on theories and things that I might be able to work with Rhythm on, and we'll keep plugging away.
Yeah, and I think that's probably part of it. I can completely understand why that is what you would ask for. I know I would ask for the same thing if I was in the same scenario. on that path to that, hopefully someday, there are those steps that hopefully along the route, they will come up with things that can help you manage symptoms and stuff so that your life is less, less difficult, less painful, less exhausting, less, whatever. So hopefully they'll make advancements and things like that at some point.
That's there's byproducts to that answer. I mean, so the ability to get back to running, the ability to do more the things that I used to love and do every day at a high level with my wife, and travel and date nights and dining and I guess a cure would be, or even moving the needle, halfway to some return of normalcy in life, and not having the financial stress and all that would be.
It's a return to what you had planned.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can relate to that, because I was crying on the phone last night to MJ, because when I retired a few years ago, before I got my fishing license, our plan was that we would spend those years finally taking many of the trips. We'd taken lots of trips, but these years from 65 to 70 were going to be our scoot about the world years. We were going to finally see Fiji, and I was going to finally get to see the, whatever, the Aga Khan, all the great stuff around the world. Like, how do you know that the 7 wonders of the world are actually there unless you see them for yourself? And I had this bucket list. Well, that's never going to happen for us, more than likely now. And I've had some good tears, and MJ will tell you, but in the grand scheme of things, if I'm crying because I can't get to take a trip to Portugal or whatever, because my husband's really high risk, and that's not such a terrible thing because I have a good life. But in the grand scheme of things, everything's just being tossed to the wayside, right? And you just take every day as it happens now for me.
Well, yeah, my wife has part of that answer and dream of to retire to Portugal. Because that's one of the places we love to travel to.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was very much a part. Europe was very much a part of what our life for the next 5 years was going to be a part of, and that's just all fallen to the wayside. But I don't want to make this about me. I want to talk to you. If you had something you wanted, because we're going to wind this down now, because it's been pretty much about an hour now. Do you have anything that you want to share with us, like a personal reflection, or, what you're feeling, and how, anything personal that you want to share with those who are listening in and other people who don't understand what LC is about?
Yeah, no, I think we've covered a lot of it through our conversation. It's, it's just stop the madness around, questioning, is COVID real, or did you get it from the jab or not? I did not get it from the jab, but sick is sick. So what, but on a personal front, I've talked about family. I've talked about my art. I've talked about, my love of running and wanting to return to, racing with Liam. That's kind of, a lot of what defined me, and that, would like to get a lot of that back.
MJ, you want to wrap this?
I think I just echo Christine's comments that we just thank you so much for your time and your energy. I'm hoping we're not a reason for you to end up needing a nap later, but we will check in with you tomorrow to see how you're feeling after our interview. We're really grateful that you've shared your story with us. We're hoping it will resonate with some people. We're hoping it will impact how they view others who they hear are suffering along the same thing, as well as maybe do more for themselves and their loved ones to avoid catching COVID if they can in the first place, and fight for whatever research and funding and supports that long COVID sufferers need in their communities. So we wish you the best. We will absolutely continue to follow you, your blog, your art, your posts, all of that. And we thank you so much for your time, and we wish you well.
Well, you've got a good spirit, both of you. And
thank you.
I think Christine and I might be related. We got that cool aging thing or I like to think I am. I'll say she's achieved it.
There you go.
And at 66, like MJ was saying to me, you're so cute with your little pigtails and your toque. And I'm like, if I can get cute at 66, I'll take that.
I know,
right?
she'll take it. Yeah.
I have my own vibe. What can I say? I like to dance to the beat of a drummer nobody else hears. That's what I like in my life. It's been a pleasure to meet you and share our space with you. Thank you. And we look forward to speaking with you again.
Sounds good. We will absolutely keep in touch. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ty. Stay right there.
So we're going to just stop the recording.